Tonight, we're looking at what daily life was like in Europe during the time of the Black Death, slowly, calmly, and without urgency. This is a story told quietly. A story of ordinary days and ordinary nights. Of people who lived through a difficult time, continuing as best they could. We'll move through this together, slowly and gently. There's no rush. Nothing to memorize. Just a quiet walk through the past. Let's begin. Before we arrive at the time of the Black Death, let's think about Europe in the years before. The decades when life moved at its own pace. When most people never traveled far from where they were born. Europe in those years was a patchwork of villages and towns. Fields and forests. Rivers and roads. Most people lived in the countryside. They worked the land. They knew their neighbors. They followed the seasons. Life was simple in many ways. Not easy, but simple. People woke with the light. They worked during the day. They rested when darkness came. There were no street lamps. No electricity. When the sun went down, the world became very dark. Very quiet. People lived in small homes. Wooden homes, mostly. Sometimes stone. The homes were plain. One room, sometimes two. A hearth for cooking and warmth. A table. Benches. Straw for sleeping. Windows were small. Glass was rare. Most windows were just openings, covered with wooden shutters at night. Inside, it was dim even during the day. At night, there might be a candle. Or a small fire. But often, people simply went to sleep when it got dark. There wasn't much else to do. The rhythm of life was tied to daylight. To weather. To the harvest. People didn't plan far ahead. They lived season to season. Day to day. In the villages, everyone knew everyone. Families had lived in the same place for generations. Your neighbors were often your relatives. Your cousins. Your in-laws. Life was communal. People worked together in the fields. They shared tools. They helped with harvests. They gathered for holy days. The church was at the center of village life. Not just for worship, but for gathering. For marking time. The bells rang out the hours. They called people to prayer. They marked births and deaths. Time itself felt different then. There were no clocks in most homes. People measured time by the sun. By the church bells. By the tasks that filled each day. Morning came slowly. The sky would lighten. Roosters would crow. People would rise and begin their work. Fields needed tending. Animals needed feeding. Bread needed baking. Water needed carrying. The work was hard. Repetitive. But it was familiar. Everyone knew their role. Everyone knew what the day would bring. Children worked too. As soon as they were old enough, they helped. In the fields. With the animals. Learning the skills they would need. There was little formal education. Most people couldn't read or write. Knowledge was passed down through watching. Through doing. Through the rhythm of daily life. The seasons turned. Spring brought planting. Summer brought growth. Autumn brought harvest. Winter brought rest and cold and waiting. Year after year, the same cycle. The same rhythms. The same quiet continuation. Then something changed. The Black Death arrived slowly in most places. It came along trade routes, along rivers and roads, from port to port, town to town, village to village. People heard rumors first, stories from travelers, whispers from distant places. Something was happening. Something was spreading. But rumors were common. Life was full of uncertainties. Harvests failed. Diseases came and went. People had learned to endure. At first, in many villages, life continued as it always had. The fields still needed tending. The animals still needed care. Work didn't stop for distant rumors. Then it arrived closer. A neighboring town. A nearby village. People you knew. People you had traded with. And then it was there. In your own village. Your own street. People fell ill. They stayed in their homes. Families cared for them as best they could. There was fear, yes. But there was also just continuation. Life kept moving. Slowly. Carefully. But it kept moving. People still woke in the morning. They still did what needed to be done. Let's think about an ordinary day during this time. Not the worst days. Just an ordinary day. The kind of day that happened again and again. Morning comes. The light is grey and soft. You wake in your small home. The fire has gone out overnight. The room is cold. You rise slowly. Your breath makes small clouds in the air. You wrap yourself in whatever warmth you have. Outside, the village is quiet. Quieter than it used to be. But there are still sounds. A dog barking. Shutters opening. The soft movements of people beginning their day. You go to the well. The same well you've always gone to. You draw water. The rope is familiar in your hands. The bucket is heavy. Other people are there. Neighbors. You nod to each other. You keep a little distance. But you still greet each other. Still acknowledge the day. Back home, you prepare something simple. Bread, if you have it. Porridge. Water. The hearth fire is rekindled. The smoke rises through the hole in the roof. You eat slowly. There's no rush. Then the work begins. The same work as always. If you work the land, you go to the fields. If you have a trade, you go to your workshop. If you tend animals, you go to them. The work is familiar. Your hands know what to do. You've done these tasks 1,000 times before. 10,000 times. The morning passes. The sun rises higher, though you might not see it clearly. The sky might be overcast. Grey. Soft. Midday comes. You rest briefly. You eat if there's food. You drink water. You sit. The afternoon continues. More work. Slow work. Steady work. You see fewer people than you used to. Some homes have their shutters closed all day. Some families are keeping to themselves. Some people have left, gone to stay with relatives elsewhere. But life continues. The wheat still grows. The animals still need tending. Bread still needs baking. You notice small changes. The market is smaller. Fewer vendors. Fewer goods. But it's still there. People still come. Still trade. Still exchange what they have for what they need. Conversations are quieter. People don't linger as long. But they still talk. Still share news. Still ask after each other's families. How are you managing? Well enough. And you? Well enough. Simple exchanges. Reassuring in their simplicity. The afternoon grows late. The light begins to fade. You finish your work for the day. You gather your tools. You return home. The evening comes slowly. Gradually. The world dims. Inside your home, you prepare for night. You bar the door. You close the shutters. You light a candle, if you have one. The space is small. Enclosed. Safe. You prepare a simple meal. You eat. The fire crackles softly. Outside, the village grows dark. Grows quiet. You can hear the wind, perhaps. The rustle of thatch on roofs. The distant sound of a dog. But mostly, it's quiet. You sit for a while. Maybe you pray. Maybe you just sit. Watching the fire. Feeling the warmth. Your family is around you. If you're fortunate. Your children. Your spouse. Close together in the small space. Or perhaps you're alone. Many people found themselves alone during this time. But even alone, there's a routine. A familiar pattern to the evening. Eventually, you prepare for sleep. You bank the fire. You blow out the candle. You lie down on your straw mattress. The room is dark. Completely dark. The kind of darkness we don't often experience anymore. You close your eyes. You listen to the night. To the silence. To the sound of your own breathing. And you sleep. Nights were long during this time. Especially in winter. Darkness came early and stayed late. People spent many hours in their homes. In the dark. In the quiet. There was time to think. Time to reflect. Time to remember. Some people prayed. Long, quiet prayers. Familiar words repeated in the darkness. Comforting words. Some people told stories. Passing down tales they'd heard from their parents. From their grandparents. Stories of saints. Of miracles. Of ordinary people enduring. Some people just waited. For morning. For light. For another day. The nights were not always easy. There were worries. Fears. Losses to grieve. But there was also rest. The body's need for rest doesn't change, even in difficult times. People slept. They dreamed. They woke. They slept again. The night would pass. It always did. And morning would come again. Let's walk through a village at night during this time. Slowly. Quietly. Just to see what it was like. The streets are empty. No one moves about at night unless they must. It's dark. Too dark to see much. Too dark to work. The houses are closed. Shutters drawn. Doors barred. Each home is its own small world. Here and there, you might see a faint glow. A fire still burning. A candle in a window. But mostly, darkness. The church stands at the center of the village. Solid. Permanent. Its shape barely visible against the night sky. The churchyard is quiet. Very quiet. More graves than there used to be. But quiet. The fields beyond the village are invisible in the darkness. But they're there. Still there. Waiting for morning. Waiting for spring. Waiting to be planted again. The forest at the edge of the village is dark. Deep dark. People don't go there at night. They never have. A dog barks once. Then silence again. The wind moves through the thatch. A soft, constant sound. High above, stars. So many stars. More than we can see now. The sky full of them. Cold and distant and steady. The moon, if it's there, casts a pale light. Enough to see shapes. Shadows. The outline of buildings. But mostly, the village sleeps. Waits for dawn. Waits for another day. People adapted during this time. Slowly. Without fanfare. They changed their habits in small ways. They might keep more distance at the market. They might not embrace as they used to. They might wash their hands more often. They might say their prayers a little longer. Small changes. Quiet changes. But life continued. It had to. There was work to be done. There were mouths to feed. There were seasons to follow. Farmers still planted. They might plant a smaller area. They might work with fewer hands. But they still planted. Bakers still baked. Perhaps less bread. Perhaps for fewer customers. But they still baked. The blacksmith still worked his forge. The carpenter still worked his wood. The weaver still worked her loom. Life became slower in some ways. More careful. More deliberate. But it didn't stop. Children still played. Not as often, perhaps. Not as many of them together. But they still found moments for play. For running. For games. Young people still married. Still started families. Still hoped for the future. Old people still sat in the sun when it was warm. Still shared their wisdom. Still watched the world go by. The church bells still rang. Marking the hours. Calling people to prayer. Reminding everyone that time continued. That the rhythm of life continued. Winter during the Black Death years was particularly hard. Not because the winters were colder, but because winter is always a time of waiting, of endurance. And during these years, there was so much to endure. Picture a winter day. Snow on the ground, perhaps. Or just cold. Grey. Damp. The days are short. The sun rises late. Sets early. There are only a few hours of daylight. People stay inside more. There's less work to do in winter anyway. The fields are dormant. The animals need less tending. Inside, the small homes are dim and cold. The fire helps, but heat doesn't spread far. You stay close to the hearth. You might mend clothes, repair tools, work on small tasks that have been waiting. Or you might just sit. Just wait. For spring. For warmth. For easier days. Winter has always been a time of stories. Of family. Of sharing the warmth you have. And so it was during these years too. People told stories. They sang quiet songs. They did what they'd always done. The nights were very long. Darkness came in the afternoon. Stayed until late morning. People slept more in winter. There wasn't much else to do. Sleep is a mercy in hard times. A rest. An escape. And each morning, you woke. And it was another day. Another day to get through. Another day survived. Winter always ends. It might not feel like it will. When you're in the middle of it. When it's dark and cold and seems endless. But it ends. Spring comes. The light returns. The earth warms. Spring during the Black Death years must have felt different. Both hopeful and uncertain. The world comes back to life in spring. It always does. The trees bud. The flowers bloom. The birds return. Nature doesn't stop for human troubles. It continues its cycle. Indifferent. Reliable. People who had survived the winter emerged from their homes, blinking in the brighter light. Feeling the warmth. There was work to do. The fields needed planting. As always. Some villages had fewer people to do the work. But the work still got done. Somehow. People helped each other. They worked longer days. They did what they could. The earth was still good. The seed still grew. The miracle of spring still happened. Children who had been cooped up all winter ran outside. They played in the fields. They felt the sun on their faces. It was a relief. A small relief. But relief nonetheless. The days grew longer. Warmer. There was food growing again. Hope growing again. Not everything was better. Not everyone was well. But spring itself was a reminder that life continues. That the cycle goes on. During this time, faith was central to most people's lives. Even more than usual. The church was not just a building. It was the heart of the community. The source of comfort. Of explanation. Of hope. People prayed constantly. At home. In the church. In the fields. While working. While resting. Prayer was as natural as breathing. It was what you did. How you made sense of things. How you endured. The prayers were simple, often. Familiar words. Words learned in childhood. Words said by your parents. Your grandparents. Generations of your family. Our Father, who art in heaven. Words that needed no thought. Words that came automatically. Comforting in their familiarity. People prayed for protection. For healing. For understanding. For the souls of the dead. They prayed in the darkness of their homes. They prayed in the light of the church. They prayed silently and aloud. The church itself was a refuge, a place to go, a place to be together, even in difficulty. The services continued. The masses, the prayers, the rituals that had marked time for centuries. Priests continued their work. They offered comfort. They administered last rites. They buried the dead. They served their communities. Some priests fell ill themselves. Some died. But others came. Or the community continued as best it could. Faith didn't make everything better. It didn't stop the illness. It didn't prevent loss. But it gave people a framework. A way to understand. A way to endure. The idea that suffering had meaning. That it was part of a larger plan. That it was not random or senseless. This was comforting to many. It made the days bearable. It made the losses comprehensible, in some way. One of the most remarkable things about this time was how life continued. Slowly. Imperfectly. But it continued. People woke each day. They did their work. They cared for their families. They ate. They slept. They adapted to losses, to changes, to new realities. If there were fewer people in the village, the remaining people took on more work. They helped each other more. They shared more. If there were fewer vendors at the market, people made do with what was available. They traded more. They grew more of their own food. If there were fewer celebrations, the ones that did happen meant more, were more precious, more valued. Life became simpler in some ways, more focused on essentials, on what truly mattered. Family, food, shelter, faith, community. The extras fell away. The unnecessary things. What remained was the core of life. The basics of human existence. And people discovered they could live with less. They could endure more than they thought. They could adapt. Not easily. Not without pain. But they could do it. Each day was a small victory. Each night survived was progress. Each morning that came was a gift. Let's think again about the evening time. That transition from day to night. From work to rest. All across Europe, in countless villages and towns, people were ending their days, following rhythms that were almost identical. The light fades. You finish your work. You return home. You wash, if you can, hands and face. In cold water, usually. There's no hot water unless you heat it. And that takes time. Takes fuel. So usually, cold water. Quick. Practical. You prepare food. Something simple. Bread and cheese, perhaps. Soup, if you have vegetables. Porridge. The cooking is done over the fire. The same fire that heats the room. The same fire that gives light. You eat. Slowly. There's no reason to rush. Your family eats with you. Or you eat alone. Either way, it's a quiet time. A peaceful time. The food is plain. But it's warm. It's nourishing. It's enough. After eating, there's a little time before sleep. You might sit by the fire. You might talk quietly. You might pray. Children might be given small tasks. Gathering the day's tools. Putting things away. Learning the habits of orderliness. Of care. As it gets later, the fire is banked. Covered with ash to keep some heat through the night. To make it easier to relight in the morning. Candles are extinguished. Too precious to burn unnecessarily. The room grows dark. You feel your way to your sleeping place. Familiar space. You know every inch of this small room. You lie down. Pull your blanket over you. Feel your body relax. Outside, the village is settling into night. Other families doing the same things. Following the same rhythms. There's comfort in that. In knowing you're not alone. That others are going through the same motions. The same routines. The darkness is complete. The quiet is deep. And you rest. Even during the difficult years, markets continued. Not as large. Not as frequent. But they continued. People needed to trade. Needed to exchange goods. Needed to get supplies they couldn't make themselves. So they came to market. Carefully. Cautiously. But they came. Picture a market day. Early morning. Vendors setting up their stalls. Fewer stalls than there used to be. More space between them. People arrive gradually. They browse. They examine goods. They negotiate. The conversations are brief. Practical. Less lingering than before. Less socializing. But still, there's a rhythm to it. A normalcy. This is what people have always done. Come to market. Bought and sold. Exchange news. The goods are simpler perhaps. More practical. Less luxury. More necessity. Bread. Grain. Vegetables. Simple tools. Cloth. The prices might be different. Supply and demand shifting. But the fundamental exchange remains the same. Money changes hands. Goods change hands. People go home with what they need. The market is not just about goods. It's about connection. About seeing other people. About being part of a community. Even in difficult times, this matters. This helps. As the day goes on, the market quiets. Vendors pack up. People return home. The market square empties. Goes quiet. Waits for the next market day. During this time, craftspeople continued their work. The blacksmith. The carpenter. The weaver. The potter. These were skilled people. Their skills were needed. They couldn't stop. The blacksmith still forged tools. Plowshares. Horseshoes. Nails. The practical items that kept life functioning. His forge was hot. Bright. Noisy with the ring of hammer on metal. The work was the same as it had always been. Heat the metal. Shape it. Cool it. Repeat. Day after day. The same motions. The same sounds. The same smells of hot metal and coal smoke. The carpenter still worked wood. Built what was needed. Repaired what was broken. The smell of sawdust. The rasp of the plane. The satisfaction of smooth wood under your hands. Simple work. Good work. Necessary work. The weaver still wove cloth. Thread by thread. Row by row. The shuttle passing back and forth. Back and forth. The rhythm was meditative. Repetitive. You could think about other things while you worked. Or think about nothing. Just follow the rhythm. These craftspeople were important to their communities. They provided essential services. They kept things working. And the work itself was grounding. Solid. Real. You could see what you'd accomplished. You could touch it. In uncertain times, there was comfort in that. In making something. In doing something useful. Children during this time lived differently than we might imagine. But also similarly, in many ways. They still played. Children always play. It's how they learn. How they process the world. They played simpler games. Games with sticks. With stones. With whatever was at hand. They ran. They climbed. They explored their small worlds. They had chores, yes. Responsibilities. But they also had moments of freedom. Moments of joy. They learned by watching. By helping. By doing. A girl might help her mother with cooking. With spinning. With mending. Learning the skills she'd need. A boy might help his father in the fields. With the animals. Learning his future trade. But they were still children. They still laughed. They still got into mischief. They still imagined. The difficult times affected them, of course. They noticed changes. They felt losses. But children are resilient. They adapt. They find joy in small things. A sunny day. A good meal. A story told by the fire. A game with friends. These things still mattered. Still brought happiness. Children lived in the present more than adults. They didn't worry as much about the future. They just lived. Each day as it came. There's a lesson in that, perhaps. At night, the world was full of sounds. Small sounds. Quiet sounds. But sounds nonetheless. The wind in the thatch. A constant, gentle rustling. Like whispers. The creak of wooden beams. Expanding and contracting with temperature changes. Old wood settling. Animals outside. A horse shifting in its stable. A cow lowing softly. Chickens settling on their roosts. Dogs barking in the distance. One dog, then another answering. Then quiet again. Owls calling. Their eerie, haunting sounds. Hunters in the night. The scurry of mice in the walls. In the thatch. Looking for food. Building nests. Your own breathing. Your family's breathing. The slow, steady rhythm of sleep. Sometimes, footsteps outside. Someone going to tend a sick family member. Someone going to the well. Soft footsteps, trying not to wake the sleeping village. The church bell, marking the hours. Even at night. Reminding everyone that time passes. That the night will end. Rain, when it came. Pattering on the roof. running off the eaves. A soothing sound. A wet sound. Thunder, distant. Rolling across the sky. A reminder of nature's power. But most often, just quiet. Deep quiet. The kind of quiet we rarely experience now. A quiet that let you hear your own thoughts. Your own heartbeat. A quiet that was both peaceful and profound. Perhaps the most defining characteristic of this time was endurance. The simple, quiet endurance of ordinary people. They didn't have grand strategies. They didn't have medical knowledge. They didn't have solutions. They just endured. Day by day. Night by night. They got up each morning. They did what needed to be done. They went to bed each night. They faced losses. They grieved. They kept going. They didn't have a choice, really. Life demanded to be lived. Work demanded to be done. So they did it. Without drama. Without heroics. Just steady, quiet persistence. This is often how humans face difficulty. Not with grand gestures, but with small, daily acts of continuation. You get up. You wash your face. You eat if there's food. You do your work. You rest. Tomorrow, you do it again. And eventually, tomorrow becomes next week. Next month. Next year. The crisis passes. Life shifts. Changes. Becomes something new. But you're still there. Still going. Still enduring. As months passed, the seasons continued their cycle. Indifferent to human suffering. Beautiful and terrible in their constancy. Summer came with its warmth. Its long days. Its abundant growth. The fields were green. Then gold. The grain grew tall. The sun shone. People worked in the heat. Sweating. Tiring. But working. The harvest came. Smaller in some places. But it came. The essential work of gathering what the earth had given. Autumn arrived with its cooler air. Its shorter days. It's preparing for winter. Fruit was harvested. Vegetables were stored. Preparations made. The leaves changed color. Fell. The world became bare again. Winter returned. As it always did. Cold. Dark. Difficult. But people had survived one winter. They could survive another. They knew what to expect now. They knew how to endure. And spring would come again. It always did. This knowledge helped. This certainty. That seasons turn. That change is constant. That nothing lasts forever. Not the good times. But also not the bad times. Everything passes. Everything changes. Life goes on. During this time, community became even more important. People relied on each other. Helped each other. Supported each other. If a family was struggling, neighbors helped. They brought food. They did chores. They sat with the sick. If someone died, the community mourned together. Buried the dead together. Comforted the bereaved together. There was less privacy perhaps. Less independence. But more connection. More mutual support. People knew they couldn't survive alone. They needed each other. So they helped. They shared. They cared. This wasn't always easy. There were still disagreements. Still conflicts. Still human failings. But overall, communities pulled together. They had to. The old helped the young. The young helped the old. The strong helped the weak. This is how human communities survive difficulty. Through mutual aid. Through compassion. Through simple human decency. It's not dramatic. It's not heroic in the grand sense. But it's profound. It's people choosing to care. Choosing to help. Even when they're afraid. Even when they're struggling themselves. Even during difficult times, there were moments of pleasure. Small moments. Simple moments. But real. A warm day in spring. The sun on your face. The warmth seeping into your bones. A good meal. Simple food, but enough. Shared with people you love. A child's laugh. Sudden and bright. A reminder of joy. A conversation with a friend. Nothing important. Just talking. Just being together. The satisfaction of a job well done. A field plowed. A tool repaired. A garment mended. Sleep when you're tired. Deep, restful sleep. Waking refreshed. These small things sustained people. Reminded them that life was still worth living. That there was still good in the world. They didn't make the hard things go away. But they made them bearable. They were like small lights in darkness. Small warmths in cold. Small comforts in difficulty. People noticed them. Appreciated them. Held on to them. Because that's what humans do. We find the good where we can. We create small joys. We persist. Night fell again and again during these years. Thousands of nights. Millions of nights across Europe. Each night, the same basic pattern. Work ending. Darkness coming. People retreating to their homes. Each night, different in small details, but similar in the essential rhythms. Families gathered. Fires were lit. Simple meals were eaten. Prayers were said. Stories were told. Silence was shared. Then sleep. The blessed relief of sleep. The escape. The rest. Night after night after night. Endless nights. Each one survived. Each one leading to another morning. The nights were long. But they ended. They always ended. Dawn always came. Light always returned. This is perhaps what people held on to. This certainty. That morning comes. That darkness doesn't last forever. No matter how hard the night. No matter how long. Morning comes. Eventually, the crisis passed. Not suddenly. Not cleanly. But gradually. The illness became less frequent. Life began to normalize. People began to rebuild. It took years. Many years. But slowly, things changed. Villages recovered. Populations grew again. Life resumed its patterns. But it was different now. Changed. The people who survived were changed. They had endured something profound, something that tested them deeply, and they had come through, not unscathed, but alive, still going. Life was precious to them now, more precious than before. They had seen how fragile it was, how quickly it could change. They appreciated the simple things more, the ordinary days, the peaceful nights. They held their loved ones closer, knowing how easily they could be lost. They were grateful for what they had, for survival, for continuation. This is often what comes from endurance, from surviving difficulty, a deeper appreciation, a greater gratitude. Not happiness, necessarily, but something deeper, a quiet wisdom, a profound understanding of what matters. The people who lived through the Black Death years remembered. Of course they remembered. They told stories to their children, to their grandchildren, stories of how it was, stories of what they endured. Some stories were sad, stories of loss, of grief, of hardship. But some stories were about endurance, about survival, about the strength people found. Stories about neighbors who helped, about kindness shown, about human goodness in dark times. These stories became part of family histories, part of community memories, part of the fabric of life. They reminded future generations that people can endure, that communities can survive, that life continues even after profound difficulty. This is part of what we inherit. These stories, these memories, this knowledge that humans are resilient, that we can face the unthinkable and continue. As we near the end of our time together tonight, let's return to the darkness, to the quiet, to the night. Picture again a village at night. The same village we visited before. But now it's years later. The crisis has passed. The village is quiet, peaceful. People sleep in their homes, safe, warm enough, fed enough. The darkness is the same. Stars above, moon rising, wind in the trees. But something is different. There's peace here, a deeper peace, the peace of having survived. The village has losses to remember, empty places, missing voices, but it has endured. The buildings still stand. The church bell still rings. The fields still produce. Life has continued. Will continue. The night is no longer frightening. It's just night. Natural. Necessary. A time for rest. People sleep peacefully, knowing that morning will come, knowing that life will continue. This is what endurance brings. This quiet peace, this acceptance, this understanding. We've walked together through a difficult time. Slowly, quietly, gently. We've seen how people lived, how they worked, how they rested, how they endured. It wasn't a story of heroes. It was a story of ordinary people, doing ordinary things, day after day, night after night, getting up, doing their work, going to sleep, Starting again. This is often how the great challenges of history are met. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet persistence. With simple continuation. People endure. They adapt. They carry on. And life continues. Seasons turn. Years pass. New generations come. The difficult times become memory. Then history. Then story. But the lessons remain. The knowledge that humans can endure. That communities can survive. That life finds a way. As we finish tonight, the darkness around you is just darkness. Nothing to fear. Just the natural dark of night. A time for rest. For sleep. For letting go. The people we've thought about tonight would understand. They knew about rest. About the necessity of sleep. About the gift of peace. So rest now. Let these thoughts settle. Let sleep come if it will. There's nothing to remember. Nothing to hold on to. Just quiet thoughts about quiet people living quiet lives. Enduring. Continuing. Surviving. As we all do. Day by day. Night by night. Rest well. The night is peaceful. Morning will come.